Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 724. My opponent kicked off with d4 and I went with d5, the symmetrical response. And I usually play the Slav defense in response to c4, so that's what we get. A mainline opening, none of this early knight f3 or e3 or anything funny like that, just going for the main line. And now knight f3 is the main move here, which prevents the move e5, the win-hour gambit. So knight f6. Knight c3, getting both the knights out, all very logical play, and I go for the Semi-Slav at this point with the pawn triangle, and he goes e3, which is actually the most popular move here. Bishop g5, though, is quite a respectable alternative at this point, and, well, maybe a little more common in my experience. You know, this move is considered a little bit passive, I guess, in some ways. You're locking in the bishop behind the pawn chain, but it leads to interesting play, and also it eliminates certain possibilities for black on the king side, where black would take the pawn and try and get a pawn majority over here. So you're just ready with the light squared bishop to take back on c4 at any time. So anyway, I just keep continuing to develop. He goes bishop d3. Queen c2 has gotten more popular recently, just delaying developing that bishop, because when black takes, there's a tempo on the bishop. So queen c2 is sort of an anti-Meran variation. But bishop d3, just going for the Meran, is still a fine way to play as well. Takes, and b5, kicking the bishop back. So that is the idea of the Meran variation, and here we are. And there's two main ways to proceed from here. You can start with bishop to b7, because that's the logical diagonal for that bishop. It wants to be on that diagonal for pretty soon and for most of the game. Or you can play like I do with a6 immediately. And the idea with a6 is to defend the b pawn solidly so that you can push on with c5 and just immediately start to undermine the center. So it's very quick action with the queen side pawns and opening things up so that this light squared bishop doesn't end up getting squashed. When things go wrong in this variation, you know, if white gets in these moves a3 and b4, locking down on any kind of c5 push, then things can get a little bit awkward here for black. Things could get kind of cramped, and he has trouble developing that bishop. So that's why I go for the sort of the quickest way to get in c5 with this a6 move. And he castled here. That's not the most popular response. Actually, let's show the main line here of the Meran at this point is to go e4, and black plays c5 immediately. And then this is an interesting position with lots of tactics. White can proceed either with e5 or with d5, busting up the center while both kings are still uncastled. White's king is actually a little bit safer than black's king. It's one step closer to castling. And well, these lines, I guess they're about even. Looks like e5 is slightly preferred by the database here. But the chess engine rates them all within the range of about even. Interesting play. So my opponent anyway didn't go for any of those super sharp lines, but just castled here. And I got in the move c5 right away. And now he went e4. Seems like after e4 I start to get some advantage, because I can take on d4 immediately after he plays e4. The chess engine is suggesting leaving the center kind of solid there. Not the chess engine, the opening book. And playing a move like a4, undermining these pawns. This pawn here on b5 is a weakness, and sometimes white can even sacrifice to eliminate that pawn. So it's something to keep an eye out when you're playing in this variation. But like I said, e4 allows me to take. If we back up one move here, you see actually bishop b7 here is given as the database's top move, but actually this is just transposing back into a different line. If we look at the number of games in this position is just one, and this, you know, having arrived at this spot, you don't really want to transpose back into a known line. Actually, c takes d4 is just the better move here, and black has some slight advantage here. Although bishop to b7 is the best move. I spent a long time, and we're out of the book after here, so let's look at this. I actually spent a long time thinking about the next move. Bishop to b7 is a very natural way to proceed, and also the chess engine verifies that's the best move. But I've had some bad experiences recently. Yeah, I guess that was pretty recent, maybe about 6 months ago, where I was playing something like this, and my king got caught out in the middle. White was able to open up some lines against my king before I got castled. So I was in a hurry to get castled with bishop to c5. And now I guess he was starting to think about this knight c6 move at some point. He eventually played that. I mean, I have left that c6 square unguarded. That's the downside of not playing bishop b7. But he didn't go for it at this point. He first played bishop to e3, defending his knight, and I got castled. And now he went for knight to c6. So he spent some time thinking about these. It's not like white was moving too quickly. Let's see, there was 17 seconds on that move and 20 seconds on knight c6. So it's a decent amount of time in a blitz game to think about a move. And you see, I spent a lot of time thinking on my next move as well. Sort of the natural response is to bring the queen out to b6, hitting the knight and defending the bishop. But, well, one point to notice is that the bishop doesn't actually need defense because it's already defended by the knight. And the second point is, if you play queen b6, he can actually play knight to e7 check. And you can't take the knight because the bishop, which you just defended with the queen, is now pinned to the queen. So it's a little bit awkward. I guess the king moves. And now, well, the knight could take here, hitting my queen. And after I take back, then he could defend this bishop or just trade off on c5. And, you know, I'm not sure if this is any better for white, but, you know, it seems like it's pretty equal. And I wasn't sure if there might be some other tactics after knight e7 check. So all in all, I decided queen c7 was the better move. The idea is that even if he goes with check now, I can just take it, and if he trades the bishop first, I take back with the knight, and I'm covering that e7 square. So this knight really has nowhere to go at this point, and so that's kind of the point of the c6 move. And I think this is keeping a little edge for black. Let's see, he traded off here, and then he went to b4 with the knight. Yeah, in fact, yeah, so starting with knight c6, white was in a little bit of trouble, and required very precise play. And in fact, knight b4 is actually a losing move here. The chess engine gives a way to save this position, but in fact, it involves losing a pawn. The chess engine wants to play e5, kicking my knight back, and then bringing this knight out to d4, and then giving up the e-pawn here. But the idea of kicking the knight back is that I don't have this move rook to d8 skewering along this diagonal. So he doesn't lose material. He doesn't lose a piece in this line, but he does lose a pawn. So it seems like he's already in bad shape. And after knight b4, he's going to lose a piece with best play. Best play, by the way, is to play a5 first, kick that knight, and then play rook to d8. And this is a pin and win situation because it's immediately pinning the bishop, and it's already under attack from the knight as well as the rook. And well, even though there's a few moves that can defend, I guess eventually that piece will be lost on d3. There's just no way to hold it in the long run. Let's see. I played this in a different move order. It's just not quite as accurate. So I went for the pin first, rook d8. I'm attacking that bishop, and it's adequately defended at the moment, and this gives him time once again to play this e5 move, and seems like he can survive this. Instead, what he played was queen to e2, kind of logically wanting to unpin, but now a5 definitely wins a piece. Doesn't have time to move the knight and save the bishop, so he's no matter what he does, he's going to be a piece down. He tried some various tricky moves here. He played knight takes b5, hitting my queen, and I had to look around for a safe square for the queen where it wasn't going to get harassed, but he's still got two pieces hanging, so So as long as I can find a decent square for my queen, I'll be okay. And now he plays the e5 move, kicking my knight back, which he spent a long time thinking about that one. I guess he finally realized he was in big trouble at that point. But there's no saving his pieces. He can, harass me for a little bit, but eventually he's got to lose something. In fact, after e5, I could have played a takes b4 immediately, and say if he takes my knight, his bishop is still hanging. So I get 2 pieces for 1. So I'm still going to come out a piece ahead. But, well, knight d8 is also fine because I get my piece out of trouble and he's still got 2 pieces hanging. So he tried next, bishop takes h7 check. Okay, trying to get the maximum amount for his piece. I went king takes. He came out with the queen check. But there's no big follow-up because all his pieces are over here on the other side of the board. And now he actually still has 2 pieces hanging. This knight is hanging from the pawn, and his queen, which was defending his other knight, ran away to deliver the check. So, in fact, he ended up losing 2 pieces because of those maneuvers. He tried knight d6 here. Well, that's a good move. I mean, well, it's an interesting move. It's threatening. Queen takes f7, but eventually I realized, I didn't spot this at first, but eventually I realized that I can just take the knight, deals with the threat, and when he takes back, then I can take on b4, and as long as this pawn is not becoming a monster threat, I'm just 2 pieces up. Let's see, he played on a few moves. He played rook a to c1, dropped my knight back to d7. He went rook f to d1, and I went bishop to b7. And he ran out of time here. He's just trying to look for a way to get back into the game, but there's not, doesn't seem to be anything especially great. If he continues like this, I was planning on playing my queen here, defending the bishop and threatening on g7. Not that this is fatal, but the point is I'm not losing any material here on the 7th rank either. I'm holding it together. So at this point, he ran out of time looking for a move. But an interesting game. Hope you guys like this. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you again soon.